Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. On a rainy and gloomy Saturday, but I did see the sunset just before dark, and that's where we're at right now. I'm out here in the shop doing a little bit of math. If you happen to be a high school or junior high or even elementary math teacher, and you see a student over there in the corner with greasy hands reading Hot Rod magazine, try to get through to them that math is cool and will help them in the hobby that they love. I never got that memo. I did okay in math. I really would have paid attention if I knew I was always solving for X. So, my dot blocked LS motor. I have everything to put it together complete. With the exception of, I do not have or know if I need to have the engine balanced. And how do you figure that out? It's the only thing between me and assembly is the balance itself. Now I need to mock it up anyway, even if I have to take it to have it balanced, because I don't have a crankshaft balancer and don't anticipate I ever will. Unless I happen to hit the lottery or who knows, but never say never. But as of today, I've never operated a crankshaft balancer. I don't own one. I respect the people that do, and as we're going to learn today, there's a lot of information to digest. And so let's get into it. So again, the last time you saw this, I had honed it. It's pretty much ready to go. I gave it a quick cleaning. And I got to tell you, this is the hot setup. You can get a smaller jug if you wish. You put the jug in your hand, you hold the clear tube down inside the liquid, you put air to this end of this wand, and in 5 minutes or less, it takes longer to drag the air hose. I do it outside. It's mineral spirits or paint thinner. It leaves a finish that doesn't induce rust right away. I still put some rust preventative on the bare metal, but I can't take credit for that. I saw it on Roadkill Garage, I believe. Steve Dolchek, whatever they call him. That's how he cleans his engines at the farm, and it's slicker than heck. I could put it in my parts washer, but it would try to eat the paint. Brake clean or whatever's going to do the same thing. This doesn't hurt the paint, doesn't hurt the finish. It dries in 24 hours or less, so you can blow it off. But again, you blow through an oil passage, you're blowing out the other side of the block 6 feet. So it works really well and it's really fast. So after I mock it up and do whatever I got to do to the block, if I have to clearance it or whatever, who knows, I'll blast it one more time. So it was a cold day. I was only outside 5 minutes, so no big deal. So in this video, we're going to talk about engine balancing. I'm not discouraging you at all from not doing it. I completely respect anybody that has the machine and the know-how to do it. There's a lot of variables, a lot of theory. We're going to briefly touch on that. I'm going to talk about my own experience as I wanted to discover. Basically last night I was out here with my scale if I need to send this engine out to be balanced. When I was young, well into my 30s even, I built a lot of engines, and me and my racing friends knew a few people that had an engine that was, balanced, and of course everybody throws a blueprint in with that, which is kind of the process as well. That was exotic stuff. We thought nothing of boring an engine out 30, 60, 100 thousandths, changing the connecting rods to like for on a big block Chevy, which I was into, from 3/8 to 7/16 rod bolts, from cast to forged pistons. Never once considered or thought about having the engine balanced. It wasn't in the budget. I was getting old pistons even. I was putting junk together, and it ran pretty good, and never had bearing trouble or any sign that there was an issue with the engine balance. The only time I was even conscious of engine balance, I knew, being a Chevrolet guy, a 400 small block has its own flywheel and flex plate because it's externally balanced and harmonic balancer. 400 small block only. And the 454, which I was very familiar with, took a different balancer and flywheel or flex plate than my 396s and 427s. So I was very aware of engine balance. The first time I paid to have an engine balanced was the first 572 that I built in 1990, 89, I guess. So, and that one I paid to have it balanced internally. So, and crankshafts and crankshaft availability and the companies that make them and information has gotten a lot better, of course, you know, especially with the internet, and information is readily available nowadays. So when we were all kids, we learned about balance on the playground, on the seesaw or teeter-totter, whatever they call it these days, if they even still have them. We learned about balance, especially when the person on the other end hopped off and we were up high and you came crashing to the ground. But that is a type of balance, but that's different. We all familiar with balancing a tire or things that rotate, and that's part of the equation of engine balancing. But in an engine, we have both, this is a poor drawing of a crankshaft, we have both rotating, your connecting rod would be here on the crank pin, and reciprocating on the piston end of the rod. So you need to know, this is a counterweight, it's offsetting the weight over here, which is both rotating and reciprocating. So that is where some of the theories and complexity comes from. So if you know, and this is where my bacon was saved, if you will, I bought an Eagle crankshaft for this LS project. It's a foreign crankshaft like a lot of them are these days. I've had good luck with Eagle stuff in the past. And when I bought the crankshaft, looking at the specs, I could see it has an 1,800 gram counterweight up here. It's made, if your bob weight is 1,800 grams, you're gonna be okay. So, in order for you to figure this out at home, you need to know what bob weight your crankshaft was cut for. And in the simplest terms, doing your calculation, everything on the big end of the rod gets counted twice, and everything on the reciprocating end gets counted once. The theory is that because there's two of these on the pin and they're moving opposite, you don't double this end for the calculations. You only double the big end. And the standard, SAE standard of balance, is 50%. So twice, once. But in practice, anywhere from 48% to 52% is in an acceptable range. On the 48 end, that'd be great for a Cadillac, a low RPM, you want it really smooth. Again, low RPM being the key, because there's a lot of variables when you're speaking about engine balance. It's going to vibrate and have frequency at some point, and you're just trying to get it out of your RPM range for the most part. So with a higher number, 50% again is a standard. That's good for a street engine or street strip engine. 51% is considered pretty much ideal for drag racing, and 52%, that would be for reasons you hold it wide open, land speed racing, large circle track, NASCAR stuff. There's been a lot of experimentation. Again, the people that own the balancers and figure this stuff out, geniuses. As a matter of fact, the standard these days, when you have a crankshaft balanced, it's on the machine, they only spin at 500 RPMs with all 4 bob weights that you've determined mounted to each crank pin. I'm talking a V8 right now. And with that thing flinging around at 500 and it's looking for where the unbalance is on each end of the crank, and it will tell you, kind of like when you balance a tire, you can rotate it up to the top where the imbalance is and do something about it. I recently saw a video where back in the day, Smokey Unick and Mickey Thompson and a few others had a crankshaft balancer that spun 5,000 or 6,000 RPM with them standing next to it, with it basically sitting on a couple of V-blocks. But they were trying to figure out how to make their engines last longer, and they must have been scary, must have been more difficult to do. I'm sure that didn't catch on. The 500 RPM-ish standard is how things are measured, so, I mean, that's not even idle RPM, but best practices in theory have proven that that works. I went on the Eagle website, and they were actually using my 1,800 gram counterweight as an example. When they machine the crank, they know how much to take off to get in that range, plus or minus 2%. So I was figuring roughly, when I did all my math, I need to be around 1,800, and there's some variables in my measuring, some variables in the way the crank is cut. Eagle tells you if you know your bob weight and you're ordering a crankshaft, you can call up and tell them that, and they will actually put the crankshaft on a balancing machine and set it for your bob weight, so that's a possibility too. And of course, once it's balanced, you're not supposed to change a whole lot of things. I see a lot of people do, and again, going back to what is acceptable, a factory engine, they claim if you're within 40 or 50 grams, that's fine. If you're balancing the engine, getting within 2 grams is much better. So let's say we have a 0 to 50 gram window of being, off, if you will. When the crankshaft manufacturers build a crankshaft these days, they try to have the counterweight on the heavy side. And it's a lot less expensive for you if your bob weight is less than the counterweight, because all they got to do is remove material from the counterweight with a drill. Most of the crankshaft balancing machines have a drill press right above them, and they can drill into the counterweight. However they decide to do it is up to them. I mean, here would be the most efficient spot, but you could actually take more material here and there and have a lighter crankshaft and come up with the same thing again. Lots of theory. Part of me would really love to totally go down that rabbit hole, but again, I'm not going to be balancing crankshafts, so. But I do want to understand it, so. They try to make it and avoid you having to add metal up here. When you have to add metal up here, you drill a hole this way, not this way. This way will come flying out through your oil pan, put oil under the tires and wreck your car. You need to take the crankshaft off and drill this way, take it out of the balancing machine, and add heavy metal. They use Mallory, they might use tungsten. They put slugs of it in here, and they've done their, due diligence and practice. They know pretty much how much to put in here to try to make this end heavier, and then you might have to massage, removing some material out to get down to that, 2 grams or less number. So let's get down to it. How do they make out? How close do they come to 1,800 grams? Well, my measurements are flawed because my gram scale does not have a decimal place. It rounds up or down. It gives me an even number every time. So to be accurate, I need a new gram scale. When you measure the connecting rod, you have to measure both ends. Now, pre-balancing work you can do at home, which is what this video is about. At home, you can take your rods, measure all of them by the ends and the total. But when you adjust weight, your goal is to find the lightest connecting rod and match the other 7 to it. I'm talking V8 stuff here. If you have a different engine, you can figure it out. And in order to weigh each end of the rod, they make a proper fixture, but basically it's gonna hold the rod perfectly level. And right now I'd be weighing the big end, and then you turn it around and adjust the height so the rod is as level as possible. And you'd weigh the small end, or the reciprocating end, rotating end, the big one. So I came out last night to build myself a fixture to do that, so I could just get close. The fixtures are $200 or $300, and not that not that sophisticated. So, but just for kicks, I mean, I already know the total weight of the rod. I would cover, so I wouldn't influence it by looking at it. This end's easy because it's flat, and I could repeat over and over every time, combining my small and big ends and come up with the total weight every time. So for at least determining whether I need to send the engine out to be balanced or not, my calculations are close enough. So I weighed everything, and this is what we got. I found the list that you would fill out if you had an engine balancer. This is, I forget the brand of balancer, but this was their paperwork. I just copied it. But basically, you need to figure the big end, the rotating end, twice. So rod rotating, rod bearing. We've doubled those. Oil factor, believe it or not, there's a factor in grams for how much oil is captured, both in for pressurizing and lubing and being thrown off. And it's anywhere from 3 or 4 grams to 10 or 15, depending on the weight of the oil. I mean, if you were really splitting hairs, every time you change the weight of the oil you put in the engine, you got to rebalance it. That'd be really extremes, but you get what I'm saying. It's a factor. So I used 8 because I'm going to be using a heavy oil. I got pretty loose clearances. There's going to be a lot of oil being thrown off there or going through the connecting rod, so, and the crank. My piston, one pin, locks, and I also have a spacer for my oil rings, so I included that here because my locks wouldn't even register on my scale, not accurate enough. 1 set of rings, and the small end of the rod, times 1. And at 50%, again, the SAE standard, I'm at 1,761 grams. I'm within the error that's acceptable, at least in OEM stuff, but again, this is going to be a race motor. Not super high RPM, but 7,000 or 8,000 is probably going to happen. So, but again, 51%, and that would be of the reciprocating end. So redo your math, and I did several times. Trust me, I went all the way to 52 or 3%, but at 51%, my bob weight would be 1802.47. So again, I could be more accurate, so I've got a few grams off here or there, I'm sure. But I'm pretty much sitting at 1800. So what this engine is, it's a block that I'm saving, even though it's a really nice one. I'm going to build a really nice engine, one I could never afford to replace with new parts. Well, it would hurt anyway. I'm using, again, I got a slightly used set of rods, a set of pistons I found on eBay. Building a really nice, powerful motor for cheap, relatively money. So I'm not going to balance the engine. I'm done my work. I'm going to make sure everything weighs the same. I might buy a bigger scale and recalculate it 5 or 10 times between now and when I actually start bolting it together. Even if I was to decide to take it and get it balanced, I would still have to mock up the engine. I don't want to have this balanced and then realize that something is wrong here and my piston doesn't go all the way up in the hole or it sticks out of the block or whatever. You still have to mock it up. And during the mock-up, I will measure my rod and main bearing clearance. So the next trip, I'll be able to actually assemble it for real. And so I'm gonna probably get a better scale, remeasure everything. I think I'm in the window of being acceptable. So I want to thank Eagle for that. If they hadn't provided me with the counterweight information, my tiny brain would have just put everything in a box and taken it to my machine shop, which is still better than what I'm doing. Make no mistake about it. That would probably be more accurate, as long as it wasn't the person that balanced that small block I showed you last summer that drilled holes in the flex plate to do it. Now I need to take the motor apart and have it rebalanced. So the secret here is to know your counterweight. Now, LS motors are very mysterious. The part number on the crankshaft appears basically in all the engines with different rods, different diameter pistons. What's that? I find it hard to believe that GM balances each one. I think their window is quite large of acceptability. And is anybody talking about their motor out of balance or having problems? No. But I want to make it clear, it's always a good idea. It would still be a good idea for me, even though I've done all my math, to have it properly balanced. But that's not the theme of this engine, and I believe I'm in a safe window. I guess I'm repeating myself now, so hey, I'm trying to talk myself into it. If you have any information, if you're an engine builder, you're probably not still watching me. But hey, I love the back and forth. I try to answer everybody. It's hard sometimes to get them all. Sometimes it's crickets. You never know. So far, the LS engine builds I've done in the past, really not much interest, surprisingly. But the LS crowd is pretty much a not measure anything, impact it together, you know. They're not using all the potential, but the thing is really durable, so to a point. Anyway, have a nice night. I'll talk to you soon. That's it on engine balancing.